thank you, first of all, for having us here, for inviting us, giving us the opportunity to present a bit of, well, our experience, our research. We already heard about Estonia. We will today hear about Norway, another example, but I would like to kind of give you a view of the international picture, of the lessons learned, of the experience that have been made with electronic voting, because this is one thing the Competence Center does. So the next 10 minutes, I hope I'm not taking longer, that we have sufficient time for questions. This is what I'm going to talk about. A bit about the research center, then why it makes sense to look at the international experience of electronic voting, and then consequences of research that we at the center have been carried out, and of course with a short summary which brings up again the points you should take from my presentation. Well, providing the knowledge on the future of voting is the vision or the goal of E-Voting.CC. We are an independent consultant and think tank, and for me, and most important, the reason why I think that we can claim to talk about the international experience is because we publish a magazine, which you can find outside as well. I think I have one with me, or yeah, the newest edition. And we organize a conference, which is called the E-Vote Conference. It takes place every 2 years, and it brings together the administration, the academia, and the business, and they discuss in a very, very open manner challenges and solutions and experiences of internet voting. And it takes place in July, and we are looking forward for participants, but also as it is an academic conference, for submissions and papers. So that's enough for the introduction. Why look at the international experience of internet voting and electronic? First of all, these consequences are based on two things. The most recent one is a research done by the Election Commission in the United States Election Assistance Commission, which is not an election commission in the traditional sense, which analyzed 49 projects basically on internet voting. And we ourselves have a database started in 2009. Unfortunately, we didn't update it, but 1st of October there will be an updated version available that summarizes 241 projects, which basically means there is a sufficient amount of use cases, of examples you can look at, or determining for, let's put it like this, for research groups or for research for results. Well, first of all, you can look at past experiences and you can avoid mistakes. You can learn from the best practices because there are challenges and problems that occur from project to project, and we will talk about that in a moment. And you can understand how certain challenges have been solved. So this is why it makes sense to look at the international experience, to look outside of the box. A lot of projects, when you look at them, they have this national focus. Yes, that's right, because it's your electoral system, it's your political tradition, it's your political culture. But the technology, in many cases, comes from an international project that supplies, that develops it, and you have to bring that together. So this is why I look at other countries and analyze what they are doing. One of the consequences of our research, looking at all these projects, is that you could identify 3 groups of stakeholders. And this is, on the one hand, you have the voter, and each of these groups has very, very specific interests in why they support it or why they are against e-voting or internet voting. Well, what does the voter profit the most? Well, they don't have to go to the polling station. So it increases their mobility. Disabled voters suddenly can work or can vote from home where they have, for example, their working place. You support the voter in the casting process. This is a very interesting finding, because when you use technology, and especially internet voting systems, you guide the voter through the process. The voter is told by the system, now it's this election, cast your vote there. And, I mentioned it before, you increase the accessibility for handicapped voters. One of the reasons why it is often introduced, and the impetus comes from certain citizen representative groups. Well, the administration is another stakeholder of technology projects, and their basic goal is we count quicker and we count more reliably. We reduce the human error. On the other hand, they can improve their voter register, because one consequence is that you very often need an electronic voter register for running such a system. And the administration normally uses the cost goal, and when you look at, it depends on how you compare the cost argument, because when you compare paper distance voting or paper remote voting and internet remote voting, you have a strong cost advantage in the long run for the internet voting. Well, and the politicians are supporting, or yes, they are supporting it because they believe, well, more voters can participate. We already heard this argument, how can we integrate the young generation? Some politicians can brand themselves as being the innovative leader. And, of course, why does a politician support any modernization project for an election? Winning or losing, more votes. Some believe by accessing the young voters, they get more support from the young voters. The counter-argument is, if we introduce internet voting, or if even introduce electronic voting, suddenly I'm losing votes because my typical clientele of supporters is more rural, more, I don't know, uneducated, and they don't have internet connectivity. So that's the first thing that we can draw from the international experience on internet voting, is there are different stakeholders and they have different interests. Well, the next part, I'm not going into the deep ones, but we already heard about the challenges of internet voting. You have three big groups: operations and management, infrastructure and technical procedures, and politics and attitude. Let's start at the bottom, operations and management. Well, legal regulations, very important point. Without a sufficient legal fundament, and it means you have to change the regulation in many cases, well, you won't have internet voting, or it ends up in the Constitutional Court and is diminished or destroyed there. A very important point when looking at the number of projects is the project management approach and the time. You need sufficient time for planning, for preparations, for defining requirements. We had the experience that we had to introduce an internet voting system as a consultant. We were part of the project team in 6 months. Well, it worked, but we didn't sleep basically for 6 months. So take enough time, and we hear about the Norwegians, and this is one thing they took time. Infrastructure and technical procedure, similar issues over all projects. Digital literacy, how can the voters get access, number of internet accesses, number of, or not number, but capabilities of using the internet sufficiently, because what you expect when you use remote internet voting is that the voter takes care of her or his computer at home, that it's kind of clean, that it's she or he are capable of using antivirus software and understand some stuff. Well, and then you have these challenges in politics and attitude, and that basically means one of the arguments that you, I think, in every project here is we destroy the election tradition of the Sunday or the election day. This is something you have to deal with. This is something you have to address. You are not destroying that myth of this day, but you just open another channel, so you give the voters more chances to participate. so far regarding the challenges, the next step for us, because this is a current research project, is to provide solutions. My last research-oriented slide or point is very easy. It's not only technology. And this is one of my core messages, our core messages. Electronic voting means you have technological issues, you have social issues, you have political issues, and you have legal issues. And you have to address all of them. You never should only think it's technology only and let's develop a great system, because then it won't be used. So to sum that up, there are manifold experiences with internet and electronic voting. Basically, every project has the similar actors. So you always have voters, administration, and politicians, and they have different interests, and they have different approaches to the project. You have pretty common challenges with different, different ways of showing or different ways of appearing. They affect your project in a different way. And there are different solutions depending on your political culture and your electoral traditions. And the final point is that it affects these 4 issues. Thank you very much. I don't know how I was with the time. I think it was okay. So time for questions.